Great Canadian Tour. I'm Glen McInnis. Well, today we're in the province of Ontario, and coming up on the show, we take you to the nation's capital for a visual history of Parliament Hill. But we begin here in Big Trout Lake, about 600 kilometers north of Thunder Bay. This area is in the middle of a boreal forest region. The Kitchenuhmaykoosib Inninuwug people have lived here for thousands of years. They have a direct link with the land, but there's been a political storm brewing here. They've been protesting mineral exploration on their land without consultation, and environmental groups have been critical of the Ontario government over concerns for the Boreal Forest. The whole thing came to a head in March of 2008 when 6 leaders of the community, known as the KI6, were sentenced to 6 months in jail after occupying a mineral exploration site. This has had a huge impact on the community, but there may be a light at the end of the tunnel after what some say is an historic announcement by the Ontario government over the protection of the Boreal Forest region, and also how Aboriginal communities are consulted over the use of their land.
Canada's Boreal Forest is one of the last undeveloped spaces on the planet. By the late 1900s, half of the forests that once covered the Earth had already been lost. 16 million hectares are being destroyed every year. And yet Canada's northern Boreal Forest is still standing. The sea of green coniferous trees spread as far as the eye can see. This is called an intact or frontier forest, and Canada is home to one of only 3 large intact forests remaining in the world. It stretches from Newfoundland and Labrador to the Yukon, covering more than half of the country. Its vast, undivided forest area is free of large-scale industrial influences. For now, there's no logging, mining, roads, or power lines. It has not been fragmented. It remains unbroken. The far north Boreal Forest remains virtually undisturbed by humans. It functions the same way it did centuries ago. And now many believe its survival and protection is critical to every living thing on the planet. Anna Baggio is the Director of Conservation Land Use Planning for CPAC's Wildlands League, a non-profit environmental group. She wants to educate people about the Boreal Forest and its importance.
And not many people even know that we have a Boreal Forest. They often call it the bush. We're going out, into the woods. And it's so important for us to be aware of it because it's one of the last intact forests left on the planet.
This forest also helps keep in check the worst impacts of climate change.
The way we can contribute to a solution for global warming is to actually keep our natural forests standing. And why the Boreal forests specifically are so important is because they store so much carbon in their soils and in the trees themselves. So by keeping that carbon stored, we're doing our part in preventing carbon dioxide emissions from increasing in the atmosphere.
Her organization says it would take decades for a young new forest to store the same amount of carbon. Canada's Boreal Forest is one of the world's largest intact ecosystems, containing more than 200 species of animals, some endangered. The Wildlands League believes between 1 to 3 billion land birds breed here. It's an impressive, large, functioning ecosystem.
It provides a home for all the critters that live here so the critters can survive. Like, for example, we're, in areas where the forest is intact, the caribou still roam. In areas where the rivers still flow, the watersheds are intact, the water is still clean.
The Boreal Forest stores more fresh water in its lakes and wetlands than any other terrestrial system on Earth. The southern Boreal region in Canada has already been damaged. It's now fragmented, mainly due to logging, hydro development, roads, and oil and gas development. Anna Baggio wants to ensure the same thing doesn't happen here.
There are only 3 big forests left in the world. One is Russia, the other one is the Amazon, and Canada's Boreal Forest is the largest. And so we have a responsibility and really a truly amazing opportunity to protect it and show some leadership for the world.
And leadership was shown here in Big Trout Lake, home to the Kitchenuhmaykoosib Inninuwug, or KI community. It's a remote fly-in community found in northern Ontario. The KI people say they've lived here for thousands of years, and recently 7,000-year-old human bones were found nearby. Now, the KI have a population here of about 1,200. They're a community that is at one with the land, and to them, it was about to be destroyed when a junior exploration company entered their traditional territory. Donnie Morris is the KI chief. His belief is simple: to protect their lands from exploration or any development that is irresponsible. It's a belief that the majority of his community shares. He took us to the site in the middle of the Boreal Forest where it all began.
First, tell me about what the people of Kitchenuhmaykoosib are facing here with this situation.
Well, what they're faced with is a company called Platniks want to drill on these lands here, and the opposition to it from the community was, I would say, pretty high. So we're given the task to prevent any movement or any drilling components coming onto our territory.
Tell me the story how you first found out they were here.
It was in March 26 or 27, 06. One of the trappers came across a campsite here. About 6 cabins were already built, and there's about 8 or 9 workers here building the camp, getting ready for the big party that will be coming in to do the drilling.
Now, when you stumbled upon this camp, did you have any idea whatsoever the amount of trouble that this would wrangle up for you?
No, I did not expect where it put us in at the end of the day, but we thought coming here and just advising the work crew to clean up and dismantle the camp and go back to where they came from, because we haven't been properly consulted by the Ontario government.
Tell me about your method of protesting. You have a non-violent method. You have more or less a policy in place. I want you to tell me about that.
Okay, when this first started, it made me think, looking at the outside environment, how other communities approached protests. You see them, you see the news. So my goal at that time was to give a directive to whoever wants to be involved, not to be violent, use foul language, or to wear any camouflage gear or headgear in regards to how we want to conduct ourselves out here on the land and at the community level.
So what is your reasoning behind that? Just to paint a better picture of what you're trying to do?
Yeah, just basically just to let everybody know we're not violent. We want to do this in a positive way, and like I said, and I think by doing that process, we garnered a lot of support internationally, nationally too. So that's one of the things we made clear. We didn't want to condone any unnecessarily hardships on whoever would be involved, and even at my community level.
The Kitchenuhmaykoosib estimate that this is one of about 24 mineral exploration sites in the area. Now, right now, we're about 30 kilometers south of Big Trout Lake. So members of the community set up camp here to protest the presence of the company. The results they got were shocking. The Superior Court of Thunder Bay sentenced 6 people, 5 men and 1 woman, to 6 months in jail. They ended up doing 68 days.
Cecilia Begg is the head counselor of the community. She was one of the KI members who were incarcerated.
Being in jail for over 60 days, what effect has that had on you and your family?
Being in jail meant a lot of drastic changes for me personally and for my family. Like it meant being away from them and from my daily routines and so on, and adjusting to the jail system. And for my family, my extended family as well too, it meant that I wasn't here, so they missed my presence, and for my children as well too, they missed that daily contact, the relationships I had with my extended as well too, were so that it was so devastating for them to see me be jailed for what I believed is true and right.
Alan Hartley is a community elder. Like many that live in Big Trout Lake, he speaks Cree. He feels the imprisonment of members from his community was an outrage.
Just talk to me about the whole situation of 6 people from your community being incarcerated. What were your thoughts when that happened?
He says he wasn't too happy about the whole situation, and the fact that Chief Morris was on the radio at that time, he felt the situation was really bad. The chief's relatives, including his aunt and his mother, I saw them both crying because of this situation. They felt sympathy towards the chief, and the fact that that this whole situation didn't really address about the Platniks and the government issue overall, I guess. It didn't address anything.
Alan, you arranged a petition to bring attention to federal officials in Ottawa about this situation. Could you please tell me about that?
He says that yes, he made arrangements to have a petition going, and because of that, I guess his intention was to expose the situation of KI6 and the fact that the treaty was being broken. According to that treaty, it was supposed to be an ongoing relationship between the government and our people, as long as the grass grows, the rivers run, and the sun shines.
The 6 members sent to jail were referred to as the KI6. They started to gain attention from the media. Headlines started to emerge, some in support of them. One read, "Are the KI6 outlaws or prisoners of conscience?" Murray Campbell of the Globe and Mail wrote, "There are a half a dozen reasons why the Ontario government's hope for better relations with Aboriginals is not going to be fulfilled soon." Ontario NDP leader Howard Hampton called the jail sentence a travesty, but none of the KI6 we spoke to have any regrets.
You think it was worth it to be in jail for that long, even though you went through this personally, your family also suffered, but for the big picture, for the big cause, would you have changed anything?
No, I don't think I would have changed anything. Being in jail and making that sacrifice and that stand, it was worthwhile. And I think once you set your goals and what you believe is to be true and what you know is right, and if you stand by your convictions, you'll know that you're on the right path.
Was it worth going to jail for 68 days?
Looking at it now, revisiting the times I look at it after coming out, I would say yes, it accomplished something. It brought the region together, at least in my region, together to really look at the bigger picture. So we just have to really make it known out there nationally that we want to proceed in this matter further.
But then the story takes a dramatic and unexpected turn. The Ontario government in July of 2008 made a surprise announcement. They said they would prohibit all industrial activity within a 225,000 square kilometre area of Boreal Forest, and that no mineral exploration would be done without the consent of First Nations communities. Certainly good news for all, but some are still keeping a wait-and-see approach. This is a sudden announcement by the Premier that he was going to actually work to preserve some of the Boreal Forest in northern Ontario. What are your thoughts on the whole thing?
Well, that's my thoughts on that matter. Is he's calling it a land use planning, but in our process, what we're trying to initiate is land documentation on our behalf. And the release he's put out, I'm hoping he lives up to his comments. But using any government structure, it takes years for these things to come alive. So I'm putting the challenge to Ontario. I'd like to see this thing take off as soon as possible. I mean, my community, I have the staff, the resources, and we're ready to go. I can't afford to wait 4, 5, 10 years for this thing to actually happen.
So what are you feeling now? Are you optimistic? Are you cautiously optimistic? Are you pessimistic? What are you?
Cautious about it. I'm very cautious because I worked in a government system for a long time, And any new releases they put out takes years to formulate. It doesn't happen overnight. So that's why I'm very cautious with this press release he put out.
Anna Baggio explains in detail what the Premier's announcement really means. Her organization is calling this move visionary. It could be quantified as the largest single commitment to conservation on the planet.
The area of the province is north of this line in Ontario, which is called the Cut Line. And this red line symbolizes where industrial forestry is allowed to go to, so how far north it is. So everything north of this line is what's covered by the province's announcement. It's 45 million hectares, and that's a huge area. It's the size of a small European country. What he said he's going to do is protect half of it, so 22.5 million hectares, or twice the size of England. And half of it approximately would look like something like that. Now obviously that won't be the area because it'll have to be determined with scientists and First Nations and all of us coming to the table. But when you're looking at the size of it, you're looking at half of that in terms of protection.
But Anna Baggio is still cautiously optimistic. So far, these are just promises.
The public is way ahead of decision makers on this. The public wants lands to be protected. So I think Dalton McGuinty is catching up to the public.
The Mining Act that exists in Ontario has come under harsh criticism. The current one dates back from 1873 and gives free access to lands in search of minerals regardless of who owns the surface rights.
It's too outdated. We got to move on with our lives, our development of our country, our province, and I think the Mining Act itself has to really reflect our needs and the rest of Ontario.
Do you feel there's a reluctance on the part of the government of Ontario to update this Mining Act?
Since being released May 28 and it's now July 13, that tells you they're not really sincere making or wanting to see changes, because they're not asking for ideas or opinions or if they want to work with us. So we have to be involved in whether the Mining Act is going to be changed.
Michael Gravel is the Ontario Minister of Northern Development and Mines. He insists his government will be asking for input from the Kitchenuhmaykoosib Inninuwug community.
Does your government or your office plan on talking directly to the KI about the review of the Mining Act?
Well, absolutely. We are going to be going through very full consultations, certainly in the north. This is going to be an intense process because again, it is going to be done starting mid-August at the absolute latest, early August if we can, going through the fall process. I mean, I've been trying to set up a meeting myself with Chief Morris just to discuss a number of things, and certainly I think it's important for me to have that meeting with him. But in terms of the consultation process, it's going to be a very open process. There'll be an opportunity on the Environmental Bill of Rights website. We're going to have that out there as well. But we're going to have consultations that are very, very public. We're going to try and be moving around. We are just literally moving now very, very quickly to implement how the consultation process will unfold. There certainly is a recognition on our part, and I think it's the right one, that we need to consult as widely as possible, even with the short time frame. We think it's important to do so. And may I say, even the short time frame, I think is doable as a result of the fact that we've done a fair amount of work already. We have engaged First Nations and Aboriginal communities for the last year and a half in terms of the consultation process, and the mining sector as well, certainly in terms of discussions. So I think we can do that. But we think it's very important to engage all First Nations in the discussions.
Do you feel your community in particular was a catalyst with making them come to this conclusion and making this announcement?
I think it is. And that's why I'm making a strong point that I want to be involved in these changes, because if we hadn't done anything, we wouldn't be talking like this. I wouldn't have gone to jail for this. So I want to be, like I said, involved as a leader, as a community. We want to be involved in the decision making and developing our territory. Well, we wrote a letter to the Premier July 7. I wanted him to come to Big Trout and do a formal apology, because I think what happened here should have never happened, or it shouldn't happen to any community that's standing up for their rights and the land we grew up in and the land we love.
And it's a land that has been virtually untouched by humans since the glaciers retreated. A land that houses one of the biggest ecosystems on the planet, and a land that many regard as the last frontier. Only time will tell whether Canada's Boreal Forest is protected and remains one of the most impressive, undeveloped spaces in the world.
What do you think is the most memorable moment in Canadian history?
I think when we saved the country some years back and managed to stop Quebec from withdrawing from Canada. I think that was a very memorable moment for me.
I can remember when we got our own flag.
Yeah, when the referendum, happened. I'm happy that it didn't go through. So I think to me it's the most memorable, period in history and of Canadian history to me.
The Battle of Vimy Ridge, which sealed us away from the old empire and made us our own country.
Anything to do with hockey, every time the Canadian teams win, just the spirit and the energy and the whole entire country just seems to go through the roof.
The recognition of Aboriginal rights is a really proud moment for Canadians.
When Quebec wanted to separate, I was very active. That time went down to Montreal, the rallies, the people getting together. That to me was a very historical, emotional period that we lived, very much so.
When they raised the new Canadian flag.
Without question, the Canada-Russia Hockey Series and Paul Henderson.
Well, hello from Ottawa. Well, it's one of Canada's most enduring symbols and one of our most important landmarks. It's the host of major events and attracts approximately 3 million people every year. It's the home of the heart of Canada's democratic system. The laws made here affect the lives of every Canadian citizen, and the decisions made shape the future of this country. I'm talking, of course, about Parliament Hill. And this is the story of how it was built.
The collection of buildings that form Parliament Hill have been regarded as the finest Gothic revival complex in the world, and the most beautiful. It's been said that the buildings of Parliament Hill are the keynote of our national being, expressing our intellectual and political ideas. They define Canadians' unique identity and style. The entire parliamentary precinct measures over 112,000 square meters. It consists of 3 main blocks. Where the Peace Tower is located is the center block. Inside it contains the House of Commons and Senate chambers, the Library of Parliament, and the Memorial Chamber. The East Block contains senators' offices and historic Confederation-era rooms. And the West Block contains ministers' and MPs' offices and meeting rooms.
In February of 1858, Queen Victoria named Ottawa the capital. At the time, Ottawa was considered a muddy shantytown, and Canada's first Governor-General once wrote that he was disgusted with the squalor of the city. But after much debate, it was confirmed that Ottawa would be the center of Canada, and many people at the time referred to it as Westminster in the wilderness.
A year later, construction of the new Parliament buildings began at Old Barrack Hill. Many saw it as the perfect spot. Acres of land nestled in the center of town with magnificent views of the Ottawa River. The new Parliament building would be visible for miles.
A group of radical young artists were commissioned. Their architecture was influenced by the flamboyant and decorative designs found in Italy and France, and their Gothic designs were much more daring than the English Gothic found at Westminster. Never before had a project of this scale been done in North America. The first stones were laid in April of 1860, but controversy followed. The contractors were in such a hurry to get the job done that a proper survey wasn't done on the site. Architects had to change their design, and the following year, Public Works announced that the cost of completing the project had doubled. There was no money to complete the Parliament buildings.
The site was closed down. Tarpaulins covered the unfinished walls. Over 1,000 men were thrown out of work. The government launched a formal inquiry. 2 years later, in 1863, the commission filed their report. It criticized the conduct of all the architects involved, but recommended that for the sake of continuity, not all of them be dismissed. New contractors were signed. The government provided additional funds. Construction was resumed. The Parliament buildings were not completed when in November 1867, the first Parliament of the Dominion of Canada met in Ottawa. As the country grew, more offices were needed. The construction schedule was accelerated. It was a tough challenge for the masons and stone carvers. The work had to be of a better class than the specifications called for. No stone would be admitted into the work unless it was dressed on the face as well as the beds and joints, wrote one masonry contractor. In 1876, 16 years after building first began, Parliament Hill was completed. Of the Parliament buildings, English novelist Anthony Trollope once wrote, "I know of no modern Gothic, purer of its kind, or less sullied with fictitious ornamentation, and I know no site for such a set of buildings, so happy as regards both beauty and grandeur. The buildings stand nobly on a magnificent river, with high overhanging rock and a natural grandeur of position." Most agreed. The groups of buildings were the finest examples of Gothic revival architecture. Parliament Hill had transformed Ottawa into what Mackenzie King called the most beautiful capital city in the world. But tragedy hit. On February 3, 1916, the headlines read, "Fire destroys Canada's Parliament buildings. The most picturesque public building in North America is a shapeless ruin. 7 people were killed. It was a great national tragedy. It took all night to put the fire out. Centre Block was destroyed. Only the library survived."
Canada was at war at the time, and it was immediately thought that this was the work of the enemy. It was speculated that a spy deliberately lit the fire. But it wasn't. It was actually lit by a smoldering cigar left in a waste paper basket. Parliament badly needed a new place to meet.
2 days later, the Victoria Museum building became the temporary home of both Houses of Parliament. It remained so for the next 4 years. It was decided that the Centre Block would be completely rebuilt. Public Works wanted the design to look as much like the old building as possible. On February 26, 1920, Parliament sat in the newly built Centre Block. One newspaper called it an historical event. The building wasn't finally completed until 1922.
On July 1st, 1927, Canada celebrated its Diamond Jubilee. Over 50,000 people celebrated on Parliament Hill, and the main attraction in the program that day was the dedication of the new Victory Tower. The Prime Minister at the time, William Lyon Mackenzie King, wanted a fitting memorial for the soldiers who died in World War I. Today, we know it, of course, as the Peace Tower. And now, more than 80 years later, Parliament Hill still manages to be the center of attention.